Is excellent. So guys, welcome to our BHG event called Employee Engagement. In this 1 hour, we're going to spend about 40 minutes talking to you and bringing you up to date with how Gallup sees employee engagement. We're very open to answering any questions you may have around engagement. We're going to introduce Gallup's Q12 survey to you and just share a little bit of an update of news from our side, and then to start to think a little bit about how to practically work with employee engagement. And you guys have already made the connection with dealing with employee engagement and strengths. For those that don't know us, my name is Yendor Felgate. I'm a director of the Being Human Group, Gallup's strategic licensee for Africa. With me today is Mafrit. Mafrit, please do a shout out.
Hi everyone, so excited to be with you on the call today, this afternoon, and looking forward to hearing your questions and seeing what comes up for you.
Okay, James is saying, well, how do we deal with difficult employees? Hold that thought. It's certainly a question we can deal with as we go through. I'm also delighted, I think, for the first time for many of you to introduce our new project administrator, Lorato. Please do a shout out.
Hi, everyone.
Now, for those that don't know, Lorato is your go-to person for anything to do with Gallup Access, Gallup code administration, distribution, and finding lost long souls that did their assessment 100 years ago. She's your go-to person, so heads up with that. Before we jump into the formal one, it'll be remiss of me not to just to say a shout out to Mafrit. It's her birthday today on World Happiness Day. So Mafrit, happy birthday to you from all of us. And at the end, you may even get us to sing happy birthday to you. Okay.
Thanks, Yendor. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Right, guys, you know how this works. The more interaction that we have, the better it goes. You're very welcome to put your hand up, put your questions into the chat, or just simply get excited and shout out. As you know, we're not terribly formal. We'll try and keep the flow of it as we get going. So I'm going to just share our slide pack with you, and we'll talk about and get going with the presentation. Now, for us, employee engagement as a Gallup strategic licensee is really all about measuring what matters most to employees. So the first thing that we'll talk a little bit about is employee engagement is about employees and asking them and engaging with them about what matters to them. It's not you as an organization dictating what they need and then trying to measure that. And so we'll talk a little bit about what measuring or what really talk about measuring what matters. And for us, and from a Gallup perspective, that's really what matters to employees in order to maximize impact. And so there's this connection in employee engagement between taking people's opinions and what they need seriously. And of course, if you get that right, the performance outcome or the return on investment. Now, Gallup has been really recognized as a pioneer in the employee engagement field. They were thinking about work attributes long before employee engagement became so topical and perhaps so popular. If you've been following employee engagement, you will know that there are many different engagement approaches out there. We're just going to focus on the positive psychology one around the Gallup, but you're welcome to ask questions in other spaces. What I do want to differentiate before we jump in is between engagement, what really matters to employee motivation, and the million and multitude of surveys out there that measure likability, climate, culture, experience, or frankly, anything else you would like to do. What differentiates what we think Gallup does, it's a validated approach to engagement. It is not just some wish list on Google form. So just keep that in mind. Happy to have the conversation as we go along. But if you could just help me by looking at the chat, if there's anything that we need to raise. So for those that don't know us, we're an award-winning Gallup strategic licensee. Our job is to empower people, positively disrupt workplaces, and change the way people lead by using the science of strengths. For those that aren't aware of strengths, there are many strengths practitioners on the call, but strengths are those inherent or innate traits that really are your power and edge. And our job really, or our mandate as BHG is help you to discover your potential, fulfill that potential, but do it in such a way that we also develop thriving workplaces. And to that end, for the first time, we're talking to the market. We're able to, and this is the updated news from our side, we're able to support Gallup's Q12 now across Africa. So we're very excited about that as a potential. So what is employee engagement? Many definitions out there, but I just took two that really, in my mind, sums up what we're doing here. For us, employee engagement is the degree to which an employee feels they are truly part of a company or organization, have a voice in its decisions, and feels respected. So engagement is a very broad concept that stretches from diversity, equity, and inclusion to having the right tools, to knowing what is expected of them, and everything in between. But truly, the shift we're making is treating employees as valued and respected stakeholders in business. So if you're running an organization that is very authoritarian and is, CEO dominated, you really got to question why you think engagement is important to you, because it does require, from our perspective, to listen to employees. Not just tick box, really listen and give them an opportunity to participate in the engagement process, and then make them part of the decisions and what you implement going forward. That really is the nub of what I think employee engagement's all around. Then if we think a little bit about it from a performance point of view, engaging the hearts, minds, and hands of your talent, the people that work for you, is the most sustainable source of competitive advantage. We've heard about strategic advantage. We've heard about culture as advantage. But now we're thinking a little bit about if we can motivate to really connect with the hearts, minds, and hands of the talent. And remember, in the Gallup world, everybody has talent. This is the most sustainable source of competitive advantage that there is. But why is employee engagement so important? I'm just going to show you a short video from Gallup. These videos are all available on Gallup's YouTube portal or channel. So if you want to go back and relook at that, it's situated there. And so the best people to talk about engagement is the guys that invented it, right? So why is employee engagement important?
When employees are engaged, when they have those engagement elements going right in their lives, they have higher autonomy, they have higher ownership for the organization, they put in more discretionary effort. We found even in past recessions, engagement was an even stronger predictor of performance. And so there's an element of resiliency. Employees who are engaged are more resilient. They fight through tough times with you. They keep your organization going at a high level, even during those tough times. And they thrive during the good times, even at a faster pace than your competition. So I would think of employee engagement as a competitive advantage, as something that says something about your employment brand and your culture. When you have an engaging culture, we all know what happens inside organizations leaves organizations very quickly now through social media and other forms. People look to their friends for advice on where to work, and they look at all kinds of outlets technologically. And so your employment brand, having an authentic employment brand, starts with having an engaging work environment where people have their performance going right. They feel like they're performing and developing and a part of an important, significant culture that's making a difference.
I think what I liked about this video clip from Jim Herter, who's the chief scientist at Gallup, is this real notion that engagement is really a great capacity to build, whether you are in a growth phase of your business, whether you are facing recession or adversity, whether you're going through COVID. It builds in that innate motivation, but also the resilience to fight in the trenches with an organization, with the organization. And so you start to see, I think, an exceptionally interesting rationale for why you should start thinking about what matters to people. And it's really this link to performance. And the way that I pose this to CEOs of any type of business is, can you imagine unlocking more energy, more performance without changing your capital expenditure, without changing the structure of your business, without retraining everybody? But by just engaging and managing them in a different way, we can release a lot more energy. Suddenly CEOs and especially executive teams start to think a little bit about, how do we switch on people? Because that's really what it's all about, is what are the small things that we can do, or the practical things that we can do about switching on our organization without materially having to restructure it. Becomes really a good way of arguing why you'd want to go the engagement route. So this is some of the research and data from Gallup for those companies that are on the top quartile of engagement. And we'll talk a little bit about benchmarking as we go through. They are 37% or experience 37% less absenteeism and employee turnover on average. 48% fewer safety incidents. So if you're in mining, what a great story that is. 41% fewer product defects if you're manufacturing. 21% higher productivity, and 22% higher profitability. And these figures, again, are available to us by just changing the way we think and work with our teams. So what is the approach that we follow in terms of that? Our approach, and I think most engagements approach, always starts with, let's first find out what's going on. In other words, what is the level of current engagement? And to that end, we support Gallup's Q12. I mean, there are many measures of engagement out there. Some of the practices that we're going to share with you a bit later would fit into that world as well. But what about Q12 is, in our experience, is the absolute clarity and simplicity of it. It is probably, in my mind, the most practical engagement survey out there because it doesn't try to measure everything and all likability or all desires. What it hones, and this is where Gallup's superpower in its research comes from, it asks the right questions in our mind. I'm going to show you a very short video, what Jim has to say a little bit about why Q12, in our opinion, is one of the best measures of employee engagement.
Gallup has been studying job attitudes for decades, even prior to the development of the Q12. We had tested thousands of questions over time and looked at how they related to various outcomes. And we really used three criteria when we were conducting this research. We wanted questions that were comprehensive, that measured really what you need to measure to drive performance. We had to make sure across many studies that the questions did drive performance through meta-analysis. And we needed to make sure that they were actionable so that managers could actually, and their teams could do something about them. So the Q12 is the simplest, most concise, kind of parsimonious explanation for how you drive performance and how you change culture and how you build your employment brand in an organization. The other thing I'd say about this particular tool, the Q12, is that it taps into elements of human nature that aren't likely to change in terms of their importance over time. Now, we found with all the different changes we've seen in front of us, more companies moving to matrix organizations, more, of course, immediate remote now, that the needs and how you leverage those needs can change, and the emphasis on various needs can change over time. But the needs themselves are constant. And we've revalidated the tool, again, 10 times over the last couple of decades through upgrades to the meta-analysis. And so that adds to the level of confidence any organization can have as they apply the results.
What I really want to highlight in this clip is this link between the questions, what matters, and performance. So that's the first linkages that is highly validated in the Gallup approach. And then the second aspect of it is the link between engagement, performance, and taking action. There's no point in measuring everything if you can't action anything. And that's a little bit about the story that we're going to tell this afternoon, is what type of actions you can take coming out of the survey that are practical but are meaningful. So that link between engagement, performance and action The survey is based on human attributes and employee needs. There's no doubt, for those of you that have been around the block, you will notice that there is some great similarity between Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the Q12. The Q12 is called Q12 because it has 12 questions. And really it builds up from the basic needs, then it moves to individual contribution, teamwork, and the importance of growth. At the base, what do I get? The two power questions at this level is, I know what is expected of me at work. It is fascinating to see the data that Gallup has around how few of us know exactly what is expected of them in the workplace. Now, how can you expect people to be really focused, efficient, and effective if they don't really know what they need to do? Now, you may go, well, how is that possible? You should know what you need to do. But the reality is the work environment is so dynamic that keeping people up to date becomes really an important baseline or focus point. I have materials and equipment that I need to do the job. Remember, during the COVID pandemic, suddenly having home Wi-Fi was the answer to office productivity. It is shattering to see sometimes how many employees struggle with materials and equipment that just are not fit for purpose. And you can imagine the frustration and the demotivation that sits behind that. What do I give? Well, is there someone who encourages my development in a positive way? Do they care about me? My supervisor or somebody at work cares. I've received recognition in the last 7 days. And do I do what I do best every single day? Then teamwork. Do I belong? At work, my opinions seem to count. So often we just don't listen to our employees. I'm connected to the mission and purpose of the company. My co-workers are committed to quality. This is such an interesting dynamic or criteria. You cannot be the only one that's committed if everybody else in your team just doesn't care. And then this is the controversial one. I have a best friend at work. Again, the Gallup research on this is so fascinating. They say it's not just having a co-worker, but literally if you have a best friend at work, your engagement goes up. Now, this is not an acquaintance. This literally means what it says. I have a best friend at work. And then, of course, in terms of growth, have I progressed in the last 6 months? This doesn't necessarily mean promotion, but it does mean development, and have there linked to that opportunities to learn and grow. So on the face of it, there are two real reactions to this. One is everybody gets the hierarchy of needs. So, management and leadership will always go, yeah, we're going to meet basic needs, individual contribution, teamwork, and growth. They get it. That hierarchy, I think, speaks to everybody. But I think what I would counsel is a lot of leadership teams go, but there's only 12 questions. Surely that's not the only thing that matters. It probably isn't, but this was what matters most. If you get this right. Now, if you do have some time, please engage with Makrit on a one-to-one basis. She's done some really pioneering work from our point of view about how to help managers practically address each of the 12 questions. What do I really do? How do I make sure that everybody in my team knows what is expected of me at work? What it does imply is that managers shift, or management shifts, from firefighting to what we think managers really should do, which is work and manage their teams in an intimate way. So what do I get? What do I give? Do I belong? And how do we grow? Become interesting metrics that we think that matters. So when you do a survey, you will get something of this nature. You get a percentage engaged, not engaged, and actively disengaged. So in the Gallup world, engaged are really your superstars, highly motivated, connected with the business, and drive your performance agenda. They bring their best to the party. Globally, this number can shift between different approaches, but typically about 20% we say are engaged. Not engaged is a staggering around 60%. These are what Makrit always calls the quiet quitters. They come in, they sit in the chair, they do some stuff, they consume space, but They're just filling time. And then about 20% are actively disengaged. These are the people that steal your toilet paper, drink your coffee, and let your car tires down in the car park. They work against your agenda. Now, if you're interested in this data, every year Gallup issues the State of the Global Workplace Report. These are workplace trends, global engagement metrics, and advice on how organizations can improve the workplace in the State of the Global Workplace Report. It's updated every year. The latest one is 2023, and as part of this, you are very welcome to download it from the Gallup portal. If we have some time, we'll stick the link in the chat button for you. So as part of some free collateral coming out of this, we highly recommend, if you're interested in engagement data and really want to drill down globally and do some great comparators, then the State of the Global Workforce Report is highly recommended. The Q12 is a little misleading in the sense that it has recently been updated, so it's now called Q12 Plus, and there is an ability to add bespoke questions or additional questions to the survey. The ones that have been added, which we particularly like, and given the context, is the diversity, equity, and inclusion one. At work, I am treated with respect. We may not always agree, but that respect is mission critical. The other one, which we teach in the certification program, well-being, burnout, and mental health. My organization cares about my overall well-being. Performance management. I have received meaningful feedback in the last week. Now, notice how onerous that is. Now, think about your team managers. Have they given meaningful feedback to each person in their team in the last week? Wow, power question. And then customer. My organization always delivers on the promise we make to our customers. That alignment to organizational purpose, I think, comes through quite strongly. Now, sitting behind the Q12 is also a question library. So you can download some questions and you can play around with that. Our advice is not to make a survey of 100 questions, rather make 15 ones that really matter, because the commitment is once you survey it, you have to do something about it. Now you notice that there's nothing here to say, are you paid well? Or the hygiene factors in organizations around climate or likability, or how many foosball tables, or is there free coffee, or is the toilet paper 2-ply? None of that. Those are what Gallup would consider hygiene, likability factors. If you really moved to measuring that, you can, but it doesn't directly, in our world, link to performance. So once you've surveyed, what happens next? Well, this is all about changing what Gallup would call the conversation at work. But before I continue, I'm going to just pause there and jump in and see if there are any questions at this stage from the audience before we move into some of taking some action. Any questions? Okay, 3, 2, 1. Of course, you're very welcome on Margriet's birthday to ask all the tough questions to her rather than myself. I say that as a joke, of course. Right, so once you are starting to think a little bit about the survey, now remember the survey is really about each individual completing the survey. Those results are electronically aggregated into a report, and of course, it will be linked to the international or generic Gallup benchmark. In other words, you'll be able to see how you compare with the Gallup database. For small to medium-sized enterprises, it's a generic comparison. If you would like additional comparisons, then we would escalate that and work with Gallup directly on your behalf. So once you've surveyed, this is where the real work begins. I think so many times organizations survey, HRs run themselves ragged trying to get people to actually just complete the survey, and there's just no energy afterwards to do anything about it. The survey is step one. This is where the real work starts to happen because we want to change the conversation. And the conversation we want to do is shift from where we are now to one of what do we need to perform well? Why do most employee or EE approaches fail? Now, we call this employee engagement, not employee equity for our South African friends. Please don't get confused. I just couldn't fit it all onto one slide. So it's employee engagement, right? Well, the first one, top left, is there's a focus on data and reports. There's more of a focus on data and reports than on developing managers and employees. Managers and employees need support in terms of understanding what the data means, what the reports indicate, and what needs to happen in terms of addressing the issues highlighted. But yet the data seems to be the only thing that we focus on. And why is because HR tends to run itself ragged, produce all the reports, and then argue to death with the executives about the validity of the report. In the Gallup world, the validity is there. We don't have to argue about things that are self-evident, but spend time in the space that matters, developing managers and employees. The other area that we fail, bottom left, is we do not view this as an ongoing commitment to achieve performance. It fascinates me that people will survey this year, then forget about it literally because other things overtake them. And next year they will want to run the survey again, but they have done nothing to address the initial survey. Then they wonder why people go, well, I'm a bit cynical about this survey. You do nothing with it. Why should I do it again? So you get diminishing rates of completion. And then, of course, you become like a politician. And as South Africa is going through its own build up to elections, in surveys, we tend to promise and then we do very little around implementation because we don't, view this as a commitment. If I say to an executive, listen, can I give you 21% more profitability in this business? They will go, absolutely, let's drive that. They're not going to give up on that. If I just say, well, let's make people happy, and they may be less committed to that. So that achievement of high performance is a commitment, an ongoing commitment. And Gallup would say to you that an employee engagement cycle, in other words, a survey, maybe some pulse surveys, which are interim surveys, and implementation is a 3-year cycle. It's not the panacea for all evil by next Tuesday. The third one, top right, is people get satisfied with being merely content. So they look at that middle group, and they go, well, they're not disengaged and they're not engaged, but they're muddling through. We're okay with that. The answer to that is no. We really want to put in place a commitment to creating an environment where there's high inspiration and committed employees. We don't want to negotiate on what that commitment looks like for everybody, including leadership. And then many surveys cater for the desires, well, we'd like more leave. Well, I'm sure we'd all like to get paid more. We would like a foosball table, etc., rather than treating employees as key stakeholders. I would say to you, there is no point asking people's opinion if you're not serious about including them in the solution. I'm going to state that again because I think organizations so misunderstand that. They go, we're going to survey, then we're going to look at the results. If we like the results, we'll share them with the employees. I mean, that's just simply, that's atrocious, but we see quite a lot of that. Or they would say, we're going to survey, oh my goodness, this looks too hard, so it's not important. It's more important to deal with sales or customers, not understanding that engagement links mission critically to sales and customers. Most organizational turnarounds is based on how we include employees in that turnaround. It's not just simply trying to sell more. And then it comes to the heart of the Gallup research around the impact of managers. Managers, these are the guys in the middle layer between executives and perhaps the teams on the ground, what they do every single day is attributable to 70% of the variability in employee engagement. So literally, every manager in your organization counts. 70% of the variability is linked to whether they are engaged, whether they're doing the right things, and whether they're driving an engagement agenda. In the Gallup research, bottom, you'll see that only 1 in 10 managers in their research are naturally talented in being managers. So that's sort of really what you bring from a potential point of view, even if you are hiring the right managers and not just promoting people because they perform well. Remember, Gallup interviewed over 1 million people in order to understand what make managers great. They estimate 30% are great, 1 in 3. 1 in 2 are just there, sounds like engagement, and 20% are poor. And if you want to change the tenor of where your engagement goes, the quality of management is really non-negotiable. But yet, we spend so little time in actually helping managers do what they need to do. When you have great managers who can maximize the potential of every team member, you have delivered on the new global requirement for a great job and life. So this is a commitment beyond just the organization, but a contribution to society, great work and a great life. But here's the kicker: maximize the potential of every team member. Somebody in the chat put in, well, how do we link engagement to strengths? Well, you've just now put your finger on us. Manage it yourself. Let's help managers really understand and be skilled at this, at having the right conversations. Manage it to individual, how each manager can really make that individual unique to themselves, maximize their power and edge, and then manage it to team. How do we help managers create great teams? And this is why we call this shifting the conversation. And then there really are very simple 5 steps. I like simplicity. That doesn't mean they're easy to do, but it'll give you some 5 steps in this space. Step 1, whatever survey that you bring to the party, read it and make sure you understand it. Mahrit, you wanted to come in?
Just before we go on to the 5 steps, there's a question.
Yeah.
How do we differentiate between managers and leaders? Now, I know, we've got a particular view, I think which links to what Gallup also says, but I think it just plays in
It's a great question.
So powerfully in this engagement. So is there a different approach from leadership to engagement, management? What do you? What's your view?
Yeah, I mean, in this context around employee engagement, we're focusing on managers because they account for 70% of the variability in engagement scores. But for us, management is that jam in the sandwich. In other words, they fit between teams that they lead, and the executives, or notionally what you call the leadership of the organization. Now, in order for engagement to work or organizations to be high performing, we want a motivated leadership team doing the right things, and we certainly want our managers to do the right things. In terms of leadership from a Gallup perspective, what we have found very useful is to say that leaders play a different role in the organization to managers. Now, there is an argument to be made that, well, leadership should not just be narrowly equated to executives. And I think there's an argument to be made for that because anybody can lead. I don't have a problem with that at all. But I think when you're working with an organization in a structured way, then we would say executives are the leadership team, usually managers are the mid-tier. Now, you may go managers and supervisors, nobody's going to shoot you. But the key thing here is leaders do something slightly different to managers. Leaders are the strategic go forward. They are the catalysts of change in the organization, and they're the connectors of the organization. In other words, they make sure that all of this works together. That's what great leadership teams need to do. Strategic, it's the optionality. Where are we going? It is the catalyst. How do I catalyze and get this thing going? And it's then the connector. How do I make all of this work together? Whereas managers, there are 7 elements of management. And it starts with, interesting enough, building great relationships. So you start to see a different flavor and emphasis between leaders and managers in terms of what we think their best role is around driving an organization. But here is really what happens is in many organizations, they've lost control of what managers do. In other words, they hire people because they're the best specialists they can find. They reward firefighting and crisis management. They don't reward the conversations that are sustainable around engagement and performance. Those 7 elements. I can't remember them off the top of my head, and apologies for that. But again, the Gallup webpage, go to Leadership and Management tab, you will see the 7 elements, but it starts off with things like, do I build great relationships? Do I communicate with clarity? You know, those types of really nuts and bolts things that fits in so nicely with what we're thinking about, what is important for managers and employee engagement. Margriet, is there anything else that you would like to add there?
No,
happiness with that?
yeah, happy to move on.
I did fail the test of trying to name all 7, but I'm sure you'll forgive me because that wasn't on the agenda. But
I'll stick it.
there are 7
I'll
elements.
stick it in the chat.
Fantastic. That's really useful. All right. Before we move on, other questions? Right. Tommy was saying leadership and management. Tommy, just to segue back to you, are you happy with that as a response, or any other follow-up questions you may have?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you, Yendor.
Okay, Vincent's saying, in my region, I work with one manager who replies to communication after make more than 3 times follow-ups. He's lagging way behind when it comes to projects in his country and staff management. I feel he falls in the poor category. Apparently, he seems to need a kickstart to respond. Yeah, Vincent, I think what you're pointing to is you can't just stereotype managers. You really got to go to each manager, and this is what I think the Q12 does fantastically well, is give you a team by team view. So the manager literally has an engagement dashboard, and he or she knows then what are the elements of engagement that they really need to kickstart. So one, it is very clear. The second one, it's a game plan on really how to roll out actions that matter. I suspect also, Vincent, that you will find that some managers are falling behind, and there may be a performance issue for that manager, and it may sit behind, or what may sit behind that is a capacity. Do they have the skills to be a manager? Are they using their strengths to show up in the right way? Are they doing the right thing? Now, Margriet has had a lot of experience in this. Margriet, I don't know if you want to bring forward that example of that one gentleman that you were coaching that just felt so overwhelmed.
Yendor, I feel like you with the 7 elements. There's a couple. I'm just wondering which one you're specifically referring to.
The one that broke down in tears,
Okay.
and was overwhelmed in the multinational that we're working with.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, it's just. And I think this is happening more and more in my experience. When we have coaching conversations with leaders, just it's yes, that specific one. Thank you. Right. So he started. He put his hands up for a new role. He was into the role about 6 months, did not get any support from HR, from his top management, didn't get support in being trained as a manager, in how to prioritize as a manager. And at that stage, when I met him in that coaching conversation, was telling me that his belt is 2 notches shorter. He lost a lot of weight. He's not sleeping. He's not eating. And he was really bordering. It's not even burnout. It was way beyond that. And I started working with him on, using his strengths to prioritize, but also working with him through the not only the 7 elements, but also the Q12, and how to use the 12 questions to prioritize working with his team. Plotted that onto the calendar and really helped him to prioritize on that. 2 sessions later, he there wasn't world peace, but he could breathe. He slept better. He had priorities in place. He had an action plan. Thank you, Yendor.
No, thanks, Preet, for sharing that. So, Vincent, there may be a story around this manager that could, in the example that Preet, give you sort of great clues about what could be happening. Sometimes people don't respond because simply they're overwhelmed. They've prioritized everything in the same way. They're not getting the best out of their team, and they just look like they are dancing on a hot tin roof without shoes on. I mean, it's in this case, I mean, it was tremendously I think, humbling to hear this man say, I'm overwhelmed. And remember, proud person. Didn't want to say this, but I can't sleep. I'm just not going forward. So I think that there is an insight and care that is suggested behind the data that we should never forget. It is not just about, oh, you're a bad manager, we're moving you out. There is a story there. And remember what Marita's been saying to us is, have we actually taught this person how to be a good manager? 9 times out of 10, we don't. Okay. And I'm not saying sending somebody on an MBA course. I mean, of course, there's value to that. But what are the practical 7 elements of management that all good managers do? Those are the things, in my mind, that sits behind the Q12 that can give us a managerial action plan. But it is based on the notion that our managers are skilled. Okay. So, Tommy, appreciate your question. I think it led to a really nice insight and some great examples. So thank you for that. Anybody else at this stage? Okay. Right. So we're talking about what managers matter. Right, the 5 steps. First one is obviously step 1 is to select your survey. We're advocating for Q12 and Q12 plus. Once you have done it, and remember, the system aggregates all the reporting. It's a click of a button once people have submitted their results. There is some work in making sure your communication rolls out. People are encouraged to and committed to completing and understanding that it is confidential. Now that the survey will not give results for teams 4 or less because we can't guarantee confidentiality. Then it's about understanding the survey results in relation to the benchmarks, right? So you can't actually respond, say for example, all 12 questions was way below the Gallup benchmark. You can't respond to all 12 at the same time. We're going to pick 2 or 3 that really matter and then start to work with that. So the organization can start to mandate. The second step, which is so important, is you as a manager must meet with your team and have a state of the team conversation. This means there is a commitment to transparency. Warts and all, we need to share the results of the employee engagement survey. If that means the manager feels under pressure because in their terminology they are not liked, then perhaps you need to work with your team of managers beforehand, but the manager must have this conversation with the team. You'll notice I am not saying HR or the CEO has a conversation with your team. The manager has the conversation. And this means your managers need to be equipped to do so, because not to do so will switch the team off, plus also disempower the manager. The third step is to create visibility for your team's engagements and performance goals. So we got to set goals. What are we fixing? What are we remediating? What are we building on? And then make engagement a priority and constantly focus on it. In actual fact, what we're saying is engagement, performance, and strengths should be the part of the management agenda for all team meetings. Engagement, performance, and strengths should be part of the agenda for all team meetings. And then this leads to starting to change the conversations from, I want you to do this, to, how can I help you to do this? Who should you be collaborating and partnering with? What is the best use of your strengths? When do I get the best out of you? What should we be doing to avoid the worst? What can I count on you to do? And what help do you need from others? It starts to change the conversational agenda. So by the time that we come around to our next survey, we have engagement goals that we can tick off. We've made engagement, performance, and strengths a priority. You can add well-being to that if you want. And we started to change the conversations from a manager driving performance to a manager enabling performance. And that's the significant change that we think is just so important around engagement. On that happy note, guys, I just want to close off the formal presentation side, and then we can, in the last 10 minutes, have a look at any further questions. But for those that want to get a hold of us, www.bhgroup.africa, or you can email us at bhgroup.africa. And we'll certainly be able to engage with you. For those that need more one-to-one time or really have specific questions that they would like us to answer, you're very welcome to reach out and we'll set up attendant sessions for you. So Vincent, I'm just going to read out. Vincent says, thank you. It's true that he's probably not using his strengths. All the other managers, I did a strength assessment with them and continuously mentoring and in touch with them and are performing well. Power be to you, Vincent. Guess what? I'll be visiting his national team for the strength management from 2 to 5th of April. I look forward to the visit. Absolutely, Vincent. I think you're spot on there. I think there is a story to be told, yeah, and I think you'll be able to make a great difference to that person's life. Excellent. We've got 9 official minutes available to us. It is open to conversation, questions, shout outs. I'm very happy to arm wrestle if you just violently disagree with something. Lizelle's got her hand up. Go for it, Lizelle. Yeah, you're on mute, sir. No.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for this session. I read the original Q12 meta-analysis. So I made a point of reading the whole document. It's long.
Yep.
So my advice at this point is don't change the words of the questions, because there's science behind the words and the questions they use specifically. If you do the Q12 plus, you add questions, that's appropriate. But don't question the words. Specifically the one about best friends at work as well. Don't question the words they use, because there's a certain link in a person's brain that gets activated by that question before they answer it. And that's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, Lizelle, that's spot on, and thanks for building on our conversation. You wouldn't disagree. In actual fact, we don't allow our clients to change the Q12 questions. You could add, which is the Q12 plus, and I'm certainly a fay with that. The psychology, Lizelle, of researching and asking the best questions is Gallup's superpower. It is as simple as that, right? So you're absolutely right. Thank you. Kim.
Thanks, Yendor and Manfred. So my question was just around the collaboration with the BHG around just the opportunity. So my brain is already clicking in terms of reaching out to some organizations in my country. And so what I'm imagining, you would go in and sell this as like an employee engagement process, and then we would connect with BHG to allocate the links. And then So I'd just love to know like what that would look like. So if I went to an organization and said, I've got this great product or process, I would then engage with your team, and we would create links that would be generated, and then I would pick up with the client from that stage. So that's the one question. And the other was, just having, are there any like marketing materials that we could use in pitching this as a product to clients?
Okay, it looks like Yendor is frozen, so let me just answer that for you. So there are marketing materials that we can point you to. You can also look at the websites, Kim. So that would be the Q12 websites. I think it's q12.gallup.com, and there's also videos. But if you reach out to us on email, we can send those to you to put you in the right direction.
Great, thank you. And so going back to the first part of the question, like generating the links and stuff like that, would that be done through being human group?
Yes. So Kim, there is a process. So there's different phases to the project. There's a communications phase. There's a rolling out of the links phase. There is a segmentation phase, and then there's also a feedback phase. So BHG can support you in all of those phases, and we can also send you more information on that.
Great, thank you very much.
No, absolute pleasure.
So I must say we've got an entrepreneur on the call, which is good.
Excellent. So what is your name actually? F3363A4.
I don't have Teams, it's Grain, Ruth.
Grain, okay, Grain. Thank
so
you.
I had to talk to the web browser, so I don't know how to change it.
Okay.
So F33648.
All right. Okay. No problem. Graham, do you have a question?
Margaret, just one question for me. If I well understand, we do have two options, right? The first one would be to run a Q12 through our platform and to deal on our own, or to work with you so that you can ensure that you are covering with us all the steps. Is that correct?
Yes,
before, during, and after.
Yeah, so you can run it from your platform, which means that you do everything for your client, or you can partner with BHG, and we can facilitate that process for you, for your client.
Brilliant, thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Fantastic. Okay, right, so folks, we've got 2 more minutes. I think load shedding has hit Yendor. So are there any other questions? You're also welcome to reach out to us at info@bhgroup.africa. We are available there. If you're like me, you're going to think about 2 or 3 other questions tomorrow. So you're welcome to contact us. Just tomorrow is a banking holiday in South Africa, so if we don't answer you tomorrow, we will certainly do that by Friday. All right. Yes, Naz. Okay, are you going to lead the song? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if there's no other questions, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate that. We're going to stay behind. So if you have more questions, you're very welcome to stay behind, and we can connect with you. Otherwise, we wish you well. For those South Africans, a happy Human Rights Day tomorrow. Enjoy the long weekend, and we will connect with you again soon. Thank you very much. It's great seeing all of you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tandy. Good to see you again.